I have much to say about this house. First, again, let me thank the staff, everyone that said yes for the evening. But I spoke to many pastor friends in Columbus, Ohio about my dream for this evening. That's where Heather and I live with our 3 children, Austin, Emma, and Bryn. And they're all doing the adult stuff, or they would have been here tonight. But we live in Columbus, Ohio. We talk to a lot of people, a lot of pastor friends that I have. And, the doors just kept closing on us. But there was this church in Cleveland that said yes. Church in Bedford, my home, that said yes. And, it felt a lot like Luke 15:20 and the familiar story of the prodigal son, where it says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him. And even before we had to rush in here to get this thing started tonight, I felt embraced by so many faces, some that drove 2 hours to be here, or more. I don't know how far you all drove to get here tonight. But Bedford Church Nazarene, thank you again for embracing not only me, but all who are here tonight. You've been doing this as long as I can remember, embracing me. And that's why this is home. My story with this house begins years ago. My family attended a little church just down the street, Methodist church. And on a particular Sunday, for reasons I don't remember, I was young, we literally started that day on a Sunday in a pew. And for whatever reason, again, I don't remember, my parents just said, we're leaving. We got up and we walked out. But right before that happened, this family walked in and sat in front of us. That'll be important in a minute. But I just remember that. And so we went down Warrensville Center Road, made a left into really probably the first church that was the next one down the street. And we ended up in Bedford Church of Nazarene. It was important then to my parents, and God knew how important this house would be to me even to this day. In this house, I would hear about Jesus from Pastor Rhodes to Pastor Pusey. He's going to pray over us later this evening. Again, I'm just so honored. But in this house, I would begin to meet Jesus. I was in this house on a revival night. I was sitting in a pew right over there. If you guys remember Manly, there's another throwback for you. Back then, they would come for a week, and they would park their RV by that little house in the parking lot and live out of the parking lot. Different times, but Stephen Manley said something. I don't remember what it was, but I know that my life would forever be changed, and that it was time for me to come home to Jesus. I made my way down that aisle, and so one of the first questions I ask about tonight is, will the altars be open? Because I gave my life to Christ on that altar right there. I knew it was time for me to come home. It was in this house that my sister and I made forever friends in the teen group. We ate a lot of Little Caesars pizza. We passed encouragement cards like notes during services. Sorry, Pastor. But we would pass encouragement cards back and forth that were actually meant to be sent to people during the week to encourage them. We went to all-nighters, blast events, and played a lot of basketball, softball, volleyball, sports. The lights in this house were hung by my dad. And he's watching tonight from Texas. Thank you. Thanks, Dad. The bows for so many weddings, maybe even some of yours, were done by my mom. And she's in heaven now, and I know she's here with us tonight. I got to play the role of Jesus on this platform in an Easter cantata. Actually, that cross over there, that was a little thinner, so it was a lot easier to put me up on that cross. But those nail holes, I remember that. I got to do that here. I was baptized here. I actually preached a sermon on a Sunday night when I was in high school here. My youth pastor, my original youth pastor, drove all the way to be here tonight. Thank you so much. That was a surprise, by the way. So awesome. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you. Earlier I mentioned this young family that walked in that other church, and they sat in front of us. Well, one Sunday, that same family walked in and sat in the church, and ironically stood in the pew before us. And they're here tonight. My mom used to always pray. This is not my notes. I'm all over the place. My mom used to pray a song called Somewhere in the World. When dating was hard and growing up was hard, she would always tell me she was praying this song called Somewhere in the World. It was about the girl that would marry her son. And God answered that prayer tenfold. And so thank you to my mom for praying, and thank you, Heather. But that family that came in was the Anderson family, and this beautiful young girl was the very first time I had seen her, and who is now, thankfully, and so blessed, my wife. We met here. We were married here. Between our families, we had other weddings in this place. We dedicated our first child here. My in-laws had their 50th anniversary in this house. I was actually thinking we could redo the picture with Austin and you holding him, but he's about 6'3", and I know you just had back surgery, so we'll hold off on that one, but we should try to do that sometime. Maybe he can hold you in the next one. As life would have it, this house has seen so many moments that hurt too. The last 2 times I've been here, one was to hold the celebration of life for my mom in this house, and most recently we held the same for my brother and friend Stephen Lay. That's this house, though. That's every house. That's the journey and why we wanted to come home. Growing up, we had a song in our house by Twyla Paris called "The Warrior's a Child," and the chorus simply said, "They don't know that I go running home when I fall down. They don't know who picks me up when no one is around. I drop my sword and look up for a smile, because deep inside this armor, this warrior's a child." I love our home in Columbus. I love our kids. Heather, more than I, have created such a wonderful home for our kids. And over Thanksgiving, they would text and say, "We can't wait to come home." And they would reference that same song. I love that so much. But I also, over Thanksgiving, realized that I can't go back to 83 Woodrow anymore. It's not our home. My dad and my sister are in Houston. And it felt weird to not have a place. We have our home, but not Bedford. And thank you tonight for being my home. Thank you for this. This evening developed, and I want to thank you for allowing me to come in and just letting me lay down my sword for just a few minutes. I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to turn this over to my dear friend, Tammy Whitehurst. She's going to make you laugh. She's going to make you cry. She'll be much more powerful than I am here. But I'll be back at the end to share one more story. But, I mentioned this as a grand vision in the beginning. And as I said, we asked several churches. Originally, Gary Miracle, who works with Mercy Me, is a dear friend of mine, lives in Orlando, Florida. He was a part of it, a guy named Jerry Howard. Just started kind of falling apart. And I finally called it. We had a group text, and I finally called. I said, "Guys, it's just not going to happen. It's a great idea, just it's not going to happen." And Gary had the wonderful idea that maybe we should do this somewhere else. Maybe we should do it outside. And in case you missed it, Gary lives in Orlando. January in Orlando is not January in Ohio, as evidence of what's outside. So we really started to scrap the plans, but there was one person that would not let me give this up on this night. In Jonah 1, we all remember, Jonah swallowed by a whale. But prior to that, God tells Jonah to go to Nineveh. And Jonah doesn't listen. He just says, "Hey, let's shut it down," in his group text string probably. But the boat got rough, and sooner or later they had to throw Jonah out of the boat. And then he went to Nineveh. Tammy basically said, "Go to Nineveh." And she would not let this evening not happen. And so she said, "Go to Bedford." And Bedford, you've welcomed me in, so thank you for that. With that, I want to turn it over to Tammy. She is a dear friend. She has been so wonderful, so encouraging. I like to think that she's a little bit country and I'm a little bit R&B. I know one of the Osmonds